What's cracking, everybody? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon GO Battle League content. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my top 5 favorite Ultra Premier teams coming up. We're getting that league back. Finally, the Premier Cups have made a return. And as you might have expected, it's a water meta, baby. So be prepared. You're probably going to see a lot of Poliwrath for Alligator, Tentacruel, maybe some quite a few Empoleon as well. Like, I feel like these top rankings here are probably pretty good indication of what we're going to see in the meta. So there are some picks here that I like. As always, we're going to go over top 5 teams and also some things that I like a lot in this meta. So stick around because we also talk team strategies. So, you know, I know that there are some of you who just grab the teams and go, and that's totally okay. But just if you can't, stick around and we'll talk about the actual strategies for these teams as well. So Pidgeot, Skarmory, like if you have an XL Skarmory, then, I mean, go for it. I guess you could bring the Great League into the Ultra League, but it's too much of an investment for me, especially with all the waters. I feel like Skarmory would probably just kind of get wrecked a bit more. It's a Brave Bird sim hero, just like Pidgeot. But Pidgeot, I think, is going to be really decent. I'm really smitten with Goodra and Dragalge as a really good tech pick here because it beats most of the waters, does very good against the dragons, has good coverage, and does not have... You know, it's very neutral into a lot of things. It doesn't have a lot of hard weaknesses outside of like some really sketch stuff down lower on the bottom. But Tentacruel, obviously, we're going to see a lot of that. If people have XL Lanterns, you better believe they're going to bring it. You thought they were around an Open Ultra, get ready to see them in the Ultra Premier Cup as well. Greedent's going to be super decent as well. And we start getting down into the ground types, and like I think Gliscor, Stunfisk, and Steelix are all going to be like underrated picks that once the waters start to get all countered, the steels are going to come in. Those steel ground types are going to come in as very effective counters to a lot of the things that are beating the water types. So obviously my boy Skeledirge is down here. Gallade could be really good in this meta as well if there's not a whole ton of ghost types. And I think the Jellicent also looking pretty good as a lower ranked water type as well. But something else I want you guys to make sure you look out for here is going to be a Alolan Sandslash. I think that despite there being lots of water and lots of other things in this meta that can beat, especially Poliwrath. Again, it's going to, you know, if the meta shifts a bit, you end up seeing things like these double dragon teams that your Alolan Sandslash could really have a good time with. So speaking of double dragon teams, good segue into the first team here, which we're looking at Empoleon Double Dragon. Empoleon got that buff with Steel Wing, and it's always been good with the double dragon. Well, my wife is messaging me and she gets priority even when I'm recording. Always remember your spouse gets every bit of every bit of priority. And I don't edit these out. So anyway, Empoleon Double Dragon, you're going to have Goodra on the safe swap with that Power Whip Aqua Tail combo as far as coverage goes. Very consistent Pokemon, very good bulk on Goodra. Empoleon is just a very strong force as well. It is a little bit awkward dealing with a Poliwrath, so like you could sub out the Goodra for something like Dragalge, something that has a better matchup in a Poliwrath, for example. But as long as you're good against the electric types like Lantern and the other like, you know, ground types, I think you're going to be doing pretty solid here. I know the coverage doesn't really lie, you know, it doesn't really show, you know, an amazing letter score, but I've played these Empoleon teams over the course of many seasons, and they do tend to be more consistent than the simulations will tell you. For example, I only have probably help if I added Goodra to this now. Now it looks much better. Okay. All right, so we have some core breakers here. Obviously, this team may struggle a little bit against Mandibuzz. I think Steelix would be fine here, to be honest. If you can keep Steelix aligned to the Empoleon, which most often they probably will be, because let's be honest, Steelix, you know, it's only winning that matchup if it lands an Earthquake, and we can even check that right now. I guarantee you that if we take away Earthquake from the Steelix, the Empoleon probably wins. We could do like Crunch if we wanted to. Let's see. Steelix definitely loses this matchup if it doesn't land the Earthquake. It has a terrible matchup into Empoleon here. Even though Empoleon has that Steel Wing, it's doing resisted fast move damage. Those Hydro Cannons add up very quickly, and they're very spammy. So, Galarian Stunfisk is another thing. Again, it has to land the Earthquake, I reckon. So, you know, you are doing pretty okay here. All Pokemon on this team have coverage into those things. They're just not as comfy when they're straight, you know, in a straight matchup because of those, the the Dragon Tails specifically from Steelix, right? So, but otherwise, this team has a lot of play into the meta. I think it's going to do very, very well, especially if people are trying to keep their Polyrath and things in the back. So, Goodra safe swap, Dragonite to close. I would probably hit Shadow Dragonite if you have one. Shadow Empoleon's a toss-up. I would probably do a non-Shadow Empoleon if you have a Shadow Dragonite, just to keep some bulk on your team, but otherwise, very good team here. So taking a look at team number 2 here, we've got a Pidgeot with double water that's sort of also an anti-steel team as well. As with Pidgeot, it gets completely walled by steel. Now, you will look at this team and say an electric will core break, and I completely agree with you here. So, you know, if you see a lot of electric types, you want to sub out that Poliwrath for something that has a little bit better of a matchup. I know that most of the ground water types don't really excel into the great or into the Ultra League as well. I mean, if you have like a Hundo XL Whiscash, that could be okay, I guess. But other than that, like Swampert, Poliwrath on the back line, you're going to safe swap the Poliwrath in bad matchups, especially against steel types, in order to try and draw out their ghost type or whatever, you know, fighting type they have. So Pidgeot can get a nice farm down, and if it's not a steel type, your energy will go places. But if it is a steel type, you just got to use Poliwrath, which is very good at winning switch with those debuffing moves. So you can see it gets an A for coverage. Pidgeot is a bit of a sim hero though, so all of these things that it technically wins against are usually due to it getting a successful bait with the Feather Dance and then successfully landing a Brave Bird, which, as you all know, probably doesn't usually work out quite that way. But overall, though, at least in the Sims department, this team has a lot of play. Pidgeot also has a lot of play with that Feather Dance. If the opponent loses lead, rather, and they switch out, you can apply that Feather Dance debuff and make either of the Pokemon in the back very much, you know, have a very comfortable matchup. This team has answers to everything in the format. There is not a single thing in this format that can individually beat all three of these Pokemon. There are definitely some uncomfortable ones. Like I said, Lantern would be kind of a pain in the rear end here. But you could definitely play around it by adding something that is, you know, also going to draw out, you know, a similar thing, but also maybe has better play into things like Lantern and the other electrics here. So, yeah. So let's take a look at the next team here. Another banger double water team, because everybody loves double water. And just to keep in mind too, when you guys see double water, if you want to, you could also flip one of the waters to the lead and then put the lead Pokemon in the back and use something similar to, for example, in this case, we have a Dragalge Jellicent core with a Feraligatr safe swap. If you wanted to, you could put the Jellicent on the lead, throw Dragalge in the back, and just find another thing that would be good to draw out maybe the ground types or the ice types, the things that Dragalge doesn't particularly enjoy dealing with. But so you could play all these teams in either way. You have to find a good safe swap to be able to hang up with the core here. But pretty good coverage here. Again, it's, you know, a blind 3 format. You're not usually going to get an A for coverage unless the team is like extremely bulky, has a lot of different coverages, right? So we're not going to probably see a whole lot of those kinds of teams unless I were to literally take like the 3 bulkiest Pokemon. But we're here to build teams that are going to do well into the meta that we actually get, not just out bulk everything, because that doesn't always work that way. Now, Greedent sits here as something that beats everything on this team. Right, it has that Crunch and Body Slam. It's normal typing, double resists the Shadow Claws and the Hexes from the Jellicent for Alligator. And we've also got the super effective Mud Shots hitting the Dragalge probably faster than it can blink. So that might be why Greedent here has a better matchup against all 3 of these. But you could certainly make a case to have, you know, you could put Poliwrath or Tentacruel or something on this team that has a little bit better of a matchup into the Greedent. But overall, still very, very strong team here. I like Dragalge a lot as a core breaker, especially to like all the water cores that we're going to be seeing a lot of. So, really though, Greedent and Pidgeot being the only things here that really are going to be meta. You might see some Abomasnows, but aside from that, the fact that not much else beats this team just straight up, pretty solid in my opinion. So take a look at number 4 here on the list. Now, this is a team that, to me, feels like one of those, like, super solid, you know, teams that, you know, you could probably beat a lot of things with. Now, the thing with this team, though, is I originally tried to feature the Mandibuzz G-Fist core And I also was looking at the Mandibuzz Tentacruel core, as Mandibuzz cores very well with both of these Pokemon. So you could run this team in genuinely any order you like. You could safe swap Tentacruel and try and win switch with it, or you could lead it, try to RPS the front, try and get win the matchup in the lead, RPS in the back line, or you could just use G-Fisk in the lead and have two things in the back that do fairly decently into fighters. I put Tentacruel on the lead in this one though, because I would like to use either Mandibuzz or G-Fisk to lure out the Poliwrath, and then use Tentacruel to dispatch of it, so that hopefully one of the other two in the back are free to clean up. Now, I would probably safe swap that Mandibuzz if I was going to choose to safe swap one of the two, and then try to close with Galarian Stunfisk, but it's entirely up to you how you want to play this team, because it's a very flexible team, has very, very good Pokemon on it, that you could literally, you just play this in any order, whatever you feel like, would do well into the meta that you're playing against. Hippowdon, which I can't wait to try Shadow Hippowdon in this meta. Like, it's going to be very fun. Unfortunately, there's so many water types that probably make it bad, but it is the only thing that will core break this entire team, as it does have coverage into the entire team, having ground and rock, which is definitely something to be aware of. And like an opposing Galarian Stunfisk could be kind of troublesome for this team here. Another, Jellicent as well. Things that can kind of core break the G-Fisk and Tentacruel, but all of them are definitely going to be playable, especially with the Coin Flip Scald debuffs, right? So, pretty solid team here. Like this one a lot, but let's take a look at the final team on the list. So this one's bringing back Alolan Sandslash, and all of those of you who know me know I hate using the fish, especially in Ultra League, but you cannot deny we probably should go back up. You cannot deny the coverage that we get here, that I didn't even add it to the team builder, because I'm a dope. All right, let's fix that real quick. All right, so we're gonna get a D for coverage, and that's fine, because I'm more interested in the top meta threats here. And a lot of these things get completely beat up by this team. Now, obviously, Annihilate is not comfortable, but you can also kind of see that Annihilate, it does beat Lantern on its own, but it's not a hard win for the Annihilate, and they probably have to land their nuke in order to beat them. This is a very close matchup, and in the one shields, right, for example, if your Lantern has a singular turn of advantage, say maybe you swap and then they swap in a little bit later than you, then you could win this matchup as well. This is not undoable here. So you just want to keep the Annihilate away from the Sandslash. I think that you would be fine enough. If you tried to save shields for Lantern, for example, against Annihilate, you think about it, right? Annihilate's probably going to have coverage in the back for flyers, so they may have something like a ground type that you could hit for super effective damage with the water coverage on the Lantern. And Pelipper, I know that many people probably don't just have an XL Pelipper lying around, so if you wanted to, you could really honestly sub Pelipper out for any of the water types in this meta, right? Like Alolan Sandslash with two water types that resist fighting, and obviously because they're water types, they do well into fire types. That's really what you want to pair with Alolan Sandslash, and if you can, give it a comfortable matchup against the ground types like G-Fisk and Swampert to give it a little bit better coverage. So you could do something like Jellicent Poliwrath, for example, which is probably going to be a very popular team with Alolan Sandslash. But Lantern here is a very, very funny core breaker in this league because of how many waters, how many flyers, right? So I think that Lantern has a chance to be very interesting in this meta. And, excuse me, when you look at the coverages, right, G-Fisk and, Umbreon, I guess, Galarian, or Unova Stunfisk, there it is. I got them all mixed up for a second there. Those are the only things on this entire list that really come up to me as difficult to deal with. You probably won't see a whole lot of belly bolts. You might see some doubles, though. But for the most part, I think this team is super solid. And like I said, again, you can always just add, G-Fit, or not G-Fit, you can always add Jellicent or Poliwrath, Tentacruel. Any of those also work with Sandslash. I'm just trying to create some different unique teams here that don't necessarily require you to run always using Poliwrath, Tentacruel. Because who would enjoy a video with 5 teams of Poliwrath, Tentacruel genuinely? That would just be kind of an absolute disaster of a video. So that's going to do it for me for today, folks. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with me in this video. Hopefully you found it helpful, and I urge y'all to join the Discord, where I have got some other teams that I like in this meta as well. well that I've typed up and gotten some analysis on the upcoming meta. So if you enjoy that kind of content and want early access to pretty much everything else that I do, please click the link in the description, the pinned comment, to learn how to join the Discord here via Patreon or the YouTube membership. That's going to do it for me for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.